Well, a very good evening to you. Thanks for clicking on to this late edition of the long range discussion for the 12th of January. And we continue to focus and study this pattern and see what we're going to see next week in terms of the cold weather. Of course, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of hype, a lot of argument as well over whether we're going to see cold and snow here in particularly the UK and Ireland over the next 7 to 10 days. And my whole justification over the pattern being colder, and of course my belief that we are going to see a colder pattern for the western part of Europe later into next week is basically because the Arctic oscillation is negative. We've seen a warming of the stratosphere, and of course we've seen the actual cold air itself, the reality of weather pushing into the mid-latitudes. We have a severe winter storm impact in the Midwest today, followed by cold air. But next week, folks, the European continues to suggest that we have frigid, brutally cold air pushing through Canada, filling Canada, and that will migrate southwards across the border into the United States for mid to late next week. As for Europe, folks, the models continue to suggest that we are going to see a building cold pool over Eastern and Central Europe. And it does appear this current model run that cold air will expand, join forces potentially with another trough that will dip southeastwards from the North Atlantic into the UK. Do they join forces? That's the big question. Certainly I feel about 80% confident that by mid to late next week we are going to be under either a very cold air mass or even an Arctic air mass. It's very, very tricky to say at the moment, but I continue to see the signs there, folks. There's no reason for me to back down on this. By Saturday, you can see that the cold air is building. This model, folks, every day for the past 3 or 4 days has continuously suggested that a cold pool fed by Siberian air will develop over Eastern Europe, and it will push and migrate westwards. How far west it goes remains to be seen, but you can see here by Sunday, this upcoming Sunday, the cold air over Eastern Europe and even Central Europe, even the Low Countries. Look at the green showing up over Holland and Belgium. That, folks, is nothing to sniff at. That's this coming Sunday. Looking ahead at Monday, you can see here the cold, persistent. That is the key, the persistency in both the cold as well as the showing up of this cold within the models. But look and notice to the northwest of the UK. Look at how cold that airflow is to the north. The very cold air over Europe. And of course that warmth is being sandwiched by these two troughs. By Wednesday, notice how the trough is continuing to deepen over the North Atlantic. As well as that, yes, the feature of cold, the trough, the increasing cold remains there. It's not going anywhere. And that's interesting, folks. I haven't seen one run in the past 4 days suggest anything other than this over Eastern and Central Europe. Like I said to you, that cold is extending almost over Denmark and into the North Sea. It is not far away from the UK and Ireland. And as this model progresses through the weekend and into particularly early next week, this model is going to have a better handle on the actual physical atmosphere and what the air masses are like. This model run at the moment still remains slightly sketchy. What is less sketchy is the fact, of course, I keep saying this, is the fact that there is cold. It continuously is seeing a very cold pocket of air over Central and Eastern Europe. But by Friday of next week, look at how the trough that was over the North Atlantic sweeps into the UK and Ireland. And of course we have a large wave and pocket of cold all over Europe by next Friday. By next Saturday, you can see here, it looks as if the cold is almost centering over the UK, Ireland, the Low Countries, Denmark, and up into Scandinavia. That is a very cold pattern. If this evolves, we are going to be shivering by about Friday into Saturday and Sunday of next week. Notice how the cold, it gets transferred up into Scandinavia, and the trough, of course, sits bang over the Europe, Western Europe, sorry. So very, very interesting development indeed. As for where the snow will come and go, look at here, sorry to interrupt my own track of thought. The trough is sitting bang slap over the UK and Ireland. Folks, let's watch and see if this model continues to suggest this. I am confident, I feel quite strongly, about 80%, that cold over Eastern Europe will migrate westwards over the UK and Ireland by late next week and into the weekend. As for snowfall, yes, if there's moisture, and which I think there will be snowfall. There will be a blanket of snowfall across parts of the UK. As for how much, I do not know. Individual locations, it is impossible to tell at the moment. But certainly I will, I will put myself into the belief that this will materialise. I do think this will materialise. And of course, it will be interesting to see whether the model continues to stick at this. Will it show warming, or will it remain cold like this? I think it will start to turn more colder, show more cold over Western Europe for later next week. But certainly a frigid start to the week, and midpoint of the week, very, very cold there over, the Ukraine, Russia, through Poland, Germany, and the Low Countries. And by later in the week, that cold air transfers over towards the western part of Europe, where we, as well as Ireland, will be shivering in some very, very cold air by later next week. So I hope you can continue to stick by my videos. There's a lot to take in. There's a lot of complicating factors here, but certainly the NAO, it isn't written in stone, folks, that if you don't have a negative NAO, we don't see Arctic air. The NAO is more of a lockdown pattern, so getting that Arctic air in place, and then of course a negative NAO would suggest more of a blocking pattern which holds that Arctic air in place. So basically what I'm trying to say is that just because you don't have a strongly negative or a negative NAO doesn't mean to say we can't have very cold Arctic air over the UK and Ireland. Hope you have a good evening, folks. Bye for now.